And there's Brandon with the steal. Picks it off, takes it the other direction. Gonna alley-oop! Dalen Brandon over Gillespie finds Jaheed Benet with an exclamation point. Nice job, Taveras. Throwing it into Weeks. Weeks trying to take it himself, and he does! Weeks right to the hole. Taveras got his hand on it. Taveras with the steal. The other direction. He finishes it. The first lead for Southern Miss.
Hey, Golden Eagle fans, I'm Southern Miss Stadium announcer Jackson Walker, and you're listening to Nasty Bunch and Beyond.
How's it going, y'all? Welcome in to another episode of Nasty Bunch and Beyond. I'm your host, Dalton Trigg. You can find me on X at Dalton_Trigg. You can find the pod account at Nasty Bunch Pod. Today's episode is brought to you by To The Top Merch, To The Top Collective, and Shantyman Premium Jerky. If you go to shantymanfoods.com and use our promo code SMTTT, you can get 30% off your entire purchase there. If you want some nice Southern Miss merch, you can go to tothetopmerch.myshopify.com and use our promo code NastyBunchPod to get 20% off your entire purchase there. And then if you will go to www.tothetopcollective.com, you can consider joining up over there and doing monthly donations or one-time donations, however you want to do it. If you feel like contributing to the official Southern Miss NIL fund, which obviously makes a direct impact on Southern Miss athletics and the student athletes. So be sure to go over there and check all that out. I know I was on here with my guy DJ yesterday talking about last week's baseball week and what was to come in this next week, and I just wanted to hop on here real quick and give kind of an update of where things currently stand with the men's basketball team, because it didn't end the way everybody wanted it to, even though they had a great end of the season run. Isaac Taveras was injured for a while there, but they overcame that, and when he came back, they really gelled toward the end of that season. You could see it, but even before the Sun Belt tournament started in Pensacola. And they, even despite being the number 8 seed, they won 3 games in 3 nights, got to the semifinals, and they just weren't able to pull it off. So, it was one of those things where it didn't end the way anybody wanted it to, but they showed promise. And, when you have guys like Isaac Taveras and Tylik Weeks, who are just, studs. I mean, they were the stars of the team. Obviously, you had other unsung heroes like Jaheed Benet and Dylan Brumfield and several others who contributed to that run. But the guys that made it go, so to speak, the engines, the people that got it started were Tylik Weeks and Isaac Taveras. So with that being said, some not so great news. A few weeks ago, it was reported that Isaac Taveras was entering the transfer portal. And then yesterday, Monday of this week, it was announced that Tylik Weeks is doing the same. So both players are planning to enter the transfer portal now, given, it's not in stone. Nothing is for sure going to happen until they, put ink to paper. But, the fact that these guys are entering the transfer portal is pretty much confirming what we kind of knew all along, that bigger schools were going to come and give them offers. And from what I'm hearing, it's not like 100% sure just yet. But from what I'm hearing, like especially with Tylik Weeks, is he's getting like 7-figure offers. Which, if that's the case, I mean, given the men's basketball team's budget, unless something crazy happens with with NIL, people want to do what I was talking about earlier and go to the Top Collective and just specifically donate something to the the basketball program, I mean, there's really nothing you can do if a guy gets, 7-figure offers. And honestly, I mean, knowing how Coach Ladner and his staff are, I mean, they would tell him, like, go. Like, obviously, you're not going to turn that down. So, but at the end of the day, like I said, nothing is set in stone yet. He hasn't committed anywhere else. He is just simply, the report was he's planning to enter the transfer portal, and we'll see what kind of offers actually materialize and become official, and then if he takes those offers. Because look, if it's not something in the 7-figure range, if we get closer to what Southern Miss can offer, if the different, even if it's not the best offer money wise, if it's at least in the ballpark, then if Tylik Weeks had it his way, he would stay at Southern. He loves Southern Miss from everything I've heard. So, and it's one of those things where if the money's close, like, are you going to take more money and go to a bigger school where things may or may not work out as good as they did in the Sun Belt? Or do you take still a pretty decent amount of money to stay at Southern, and then you're a star player, and you probably, more than likely, in my opinion, go into next season as the clear favorite to win Sun Belt Player of the Year, and Southern Miss would be one of the favorites to win the conference, in my opinion. So, especially with Troy's coach leaving, so it's one of those things where it's tough. Like you have to know your limits as far as what the program has to offer money wise to these guys, and it's just one of those things where you can't be mad at the guys either, because I mean these these dudes are getting generational type of wealth offered to them at this young age. I mean, obviously you're going to take it and go to the bigger school and then see where it goes from there. But we'll see how it turns out. But that's where things are currently at with Isaac Taveras and Tylik Weeks. Look, people are going to act like the sky is falling because both of these dudes could potentially be gone. But you look at where the team was last year before they came along. I mean, it's this team this past year was assembled. The offseason before with Taveras and Weeks and Dejournay and getting Dylan Brumfield from William Carey and all the different parts that came together kind of last second. And yeah, it makes it tough to have your roster gel as we saw at the start of this past season. But if Taveras hadn't gotten injured, it would have come together pretty nicely, and you'd find yourself stringing together more wins instead of having to compensate for Taveras being out. And then when he came back, you had to adjust to, playing with him again and getting the rotations right and all that. So that kind of threw a wrench into their plans. But I'd say overall, for building a roster on the fly, Coach Ladner and his coaching staff did a great job putting things together and, having a very competitive roster, and arguably found the best player in the Sun Belt, in my opinion. So, in Tylik Weeks. So, it can be done again. There's some interesting pieces that are already, we saw just yesterday, like there's already been two very intriguing commitments that the men's basketball team has gotten. One is Camden Series. I think I'm saying his last name right, but he's a 6'4", 200-pound point guard out of St. Leo, a D2 school. So, he'll have, I believe he's a sophomore, so he'll have 2 years left of eligibility. But at St. Leo, he averaged 17 points a game, nearly 5 rebounds a game, 3 assists a game, and shot 41.2% from three. Dude can shoot it. And he very, very intriguing prospect there. Almost 50% overall on his overall field goal percentage. So very interesting D2 prospect coming to Southern Miss for next year. 6'4", 200-pound point guard from St. Leo. So I'd implore you to go look it up because, like I said, he's very impressive. Not just with his 3-point shot, but he can work his way to the rim as well and score with contact and all that good stuff. So from what little I have seen of him film wise, I think that's going to be a pretty good get, pretty sneaky get for the Southern Miss men's basketball team next year. And then the most recent one is Dorian Bowen, who is a South Haven native. He is 6'5" point guard. According to what I've heard, we beat out several other Sunbelt teams to get him. So he's from South Haven, close to the Memphis area, but technically Mississippi because of South Haven. But I'm very excited to see what Dorian Bowman can do because he's going to be a freshman. He's going to be probably thrown into the fire early, depending on how the rest of this roster building unfolds. But hey, that's okay. I mean, that's how you learn. That's how you grow. That's how you got a guy that's a freshman you can throw in there and get live reps from day one. That's the only way that you can truly develop and get better is by getting live in-game reps. Practice and everything is great, but you got to get playing time. And, Dorian Bowen could get a lot of that at the start of this next season. And like I said, depending on how the rest of this roster building unfolds. So, I was thinking about the other day, all this talk about Tylik Weeks and Isaac Taveras the last few weeks, and I get it; it's warranted. Those are the two guys, but this team has a lot more to replace because Dylan Brumfield, he was one of the under the radar dudes this entire past year. Senior guard transferred over from William Carey and was awesome. In my opinion, I thought he could have done a lot more scoring wise throughout the year if he wanted to. He just didn't really have to because Tylik Weeks and Taveras can handle that a lot of the times. But really thought he was like a Swiss Army knife, could do a little bit of everything. So that's a big one that Southern Miss is losing, and not to the transfer portal just because he's graduating. And then Deja Benet, who was a graduate transfer, and he was a beast. He was basically a walking double-double every night. So that's going to be tough to replace. It'll be very interesting to see how this staff approaches, the big man position. Because you're not just losing Benet, you're losing Tegra Ize as well. He's graduating. So it'll be interesting. What do you do? Do you go the D2 route like some of these guys? Do you just get a younger guy, or do you rely on a guy like EJ Payman, who he was a redshirt freshman this past year, transferred from Mississippi State, one of the best. He was actually the top high school recruit in the state back in 2024. So maybe you continue to develop him and he takes a big step forward in one of either the power forward or maybe a small ball center type of role. Or, look, you could potentially look overseas because just in my experience and from what I have seen, especially with my time covering the Dallas Mavericks and, making these different connections with people in Slovenia and, the surrounding areas over there from when Luka Doncic was on the Dallas Mavericks, there's a lot of talent over there that just gets, in my opinion, overlooked and it's weird that they get overlooked because Luka Doncic is from Slovenia. You'd think that would shine an even brighter light on a lot of those places over there, but they've got some talent over there. Some of those basketball academies and these younger guys coming up, and then when they get to a certain age, they start playing professionally, and get all that experience going. And there's a lot of those kids that would love to come to the States and play D1 basketball at Southern Miss. So, I'm not saying that's the answer, but it could be a possibility, So a lot of different ways that this could be attacked this offseason, and it'll be interesting to see how Ladner and company look to go about that. So yeah, that's going to do it for another episode. Just want to hop on here real quick and kind of give an update of where things currently stand with the Southern Miss men's basketball team, and we'll continue to update you guys as this offseason progresses and we get more information. But that's going to do it for another episode of Nasty Bunch and Beyond. Be sure to go like, rate, and subscribe on all your favorite podcast platforms. If you don't mind taking just a few seconds to go to either Apple Podcasts or Spotify and leave us a review and a rating, really helps us out. If you don't want to, that's fine, but it only takes a few seconds and it really helps us out. So I'd appreciate it if you enjoy what you're listening to on a weekly basis here. So guys, y'all have a good one. Have a great rest of your week. We'll see you next time.